What is my ideal watch collection size? Am I gonna come out with a collection video sometime soon? I'm gonna go over some of those. One question I got was from Brad, and he asked, what's my ideal watch collection size? And that has kind of varied. When I first got into them, I said I wanted a 3-watch collection, and then it ballooned, and I said, you know what, maybe 6 or 8 is the ideal watch collection size. And then I pared it back down to 3. Right now, I would say my ideal collection size is probably no more than 10. As soon as I go practically more than 5, I just don't wear the other ones. So, I mean, ideally I'd have something like 5, but I don't think that's practical. There are some watches I don't really wear, but I would never get rid of. And so that's why I would say ideal collection size is probably closer to 10, but I'd really wear on a relatively regular basis, probably about 6 of those. The other ones being functional for specific events or for mementos. Is a watch collection video coming out? This also came from Brad. Yes, I'm in the middle of working on some of that. There were some watches that have come in that I want to go out. It also takes a long time for me to kind of put a watch collection video together because I have a lot of thoughts and I want to formulate them before I try and say it in 2 minutes. Usually these are off the cuff, and so trying to fit it down into 2 minutes is really challenging. That's kind of what I'm working on, but there's gonna be one coming up here probably in the next month or so. Mike on Instagram, he asked me about the Pelagos 39. I just released a video about 2 months later. He asked about the sides of the case and bracelet being too sharp. I had never heard of anyone complaining about the sides of the case and bracelet on this being too sharp. In terms of the actual watch itself, the only part I can say is probably a little sharp or pointy is the actual clasp there. So this point here on the Tudor shield, that is relatively pointy. It's still actually knocked down a little bit. It's not that sharp, but that's about the only thing. Everything else on here is perfectly fine. I haven't noticed anything feeling too sharp. I mean, they're stark edges because they're supposed to be. They're supposed to feel refined and they're supposed to feel exact, but they're not too sharp at all. So no, I don't think they're too sharp. Photograph IEAJ, he sent me a message. He asked Longines, yes or no? I'm a yes. I mean, for most watch brands, if you don't basically just send out crap watches, you know, something that's really, really cheaply made for an inflated price and you're half ripping people off, I don't have a problem with the watch brand. And Longines is not doing that at all. I mean, yes, they're part of the Swatch Group. Yes, they have better buying power. And so the price of their movements is less than probably what they actually sell them for. That doesn't mean that the watch itself isn't well made, that it's not a good value in terms of where it's sitting at its price point. I feel like it offers the same amount or maybe a little more than most of the other watches around the same price point. So I don't think that it's a no at all. I love their heritage. They used to be one of the largest brands, one of the most prestigious brands too in the early 20th century. So I really like Longines. I haven't owned one yet because I'm trying to find the right one and probably vintage, but I really like the brand, so it's a yes from me. Watch Hightower asked, what is your first watch, or what was your first watch? And I'm gonna end up with a video going over some of that stuff eventually. Technically, my first watch, I was in 4th grade. My mother gave me a watch, and it was basically supposed to be a watch that I had when I went to space camp, and she wanted me to be able to take care of time and kind of know what was going on. And it was a Timex Ironman, and I loved that thing. I mean, I wore that all the time. And my favorite part about it was it felt like I was a man now that I had a watch. And I'll never forget that feeling of when I got it. And my second watch was a pocket watch. Because some kid in 4th grade had a pocket watch. I thought it was so cool. So I went out and bought a Timex pocket watch as well. So I'll get into that story some other time, but first one technically was an Ironman, and I absolutely loved that watch. LP Blade 7 asks, is there a watch that gets a lot of praise or a lot of love that I just can't get behind for whatever reason? And I think there's a lot of watches, frankly, that get a lot of attention that I don't necessarily understand. I think the best example of that is probably the outsized reaction to the Patek Nautilus. And I say that with a small caveat. When I first got into watches, everyone was nuts about the Patek. I mean, it was still relatively popular at that point. Now it's absurd, but at that point it was still really hot on the market. And I had seen one in person. And the thing that I found when I've looked at these watches that are on the really high end is, yes, the movement is finished well. I don't disagree with that at all. But if you look at just the dial face, you know, it's not gonna jump out at you, man, this is an incredible watch. And I think the Patek was a similar feeling for me. It felt like a steel sports watch. It was nice and thin. It was a really nice watch, but it wasn't like the thing that was going to change my world in watches. And so I felt like there was a whole lot of interest behind that, you know, for me, I felt like there are a lot of other things on the market that I like a little bit more. And so I don't really fall into the Patek praise. I did a video with my wife where we talked about watches and I had to rank them. And I kind of fought back with her a little bit when she ranked the Nautilus because I think most people expect it to be ranked highly. And so I was reacting that way. And it kind of changed my perspective when I started talking to her about it because she just didn't like it. And I think it's important sometimes to take yourself out of the hype and look at the watch as you would actually look at it. And I think it was fair. I mean, it still had a pin and collar system on the bracelet. That alone is crazy to me for a watch worth that much money in a modern context. So it's that sort of stuff. I would say the Patek Nautilus is one that I really just don't love and I can't really jump 100% behind. So that would be my example. AJT asks, I mentioned a warehouse multiple times in my videos and he said, you know, what do I do for a living? It's a great question. So my family and I own a manufacturing company, essentially. So we started as a construction company, started as a contractor. Now we produce pergolas that open and close. So they're aluminum pergolas that are motorized to open and close, and we sell them direct to consumer across the country. That's basically what we do. The product's called the Luxury Pergola. I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to poke around and see what we do, but that's essentially it. And so I'm in a warehouse, usually handling aluminum all the time. So I end up with the cuts and nicks and scratches and whatnot. But that's kind of what I do now. I used to come from the straight contracting side. So pouring concrete, finishing concrete, building, wood framing, replacing windows, siding, that sort of stuff. But now it's mainly just the manufacturing front. So that's pretty much all I got. There were a good number of questions, not a huge number of questions. I'll be asking questions probably in the future just on Instagram because I got a better response rate there. More people actually gave me questions. So that's where I'm going to be doing them in the future. So if you want to ask stuff, you can give me a follow over there. Any other questions you guys have, obviously leave them in the comments below. I'm usually pretty responsive in terms of answering things or my thoughts down there. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.